lot of nifty things come from Wisconsin. Cheese, ginseng, Jeffrey Dahmer, bovine genetics, Ed Gein, and Raven Software. If you've never heard of Raven Software, shame on you. It's okay, you simple fool. I'll educate you. Raven has made some of the best video games of the past 30 years, and that's a fact. Pay attention. Heretic and Hexen, two classics that comfortably ride in the shadow of Doom and Quake. X-Men Origins Wolverine, one of the best movie tie-ins ever made. I'm still looking for a copy to review for this channel. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which was awesome and came before the ongoing tsunami of sewage that is the modern Marvel mass marketing machine. I like alliteration. Hey, did someone say oversaturation? Raven also developed Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast and its sequel, Jedi Academy. Yes, 2 came before. Just play Outcast first. Look, I'm sick beyond death of Star Wars, but I'll play the Jedi Knight games any day. Then these bold zombies developed the two most underrated FPSs like ever. Wolfenstein 2009 and Singularity, especially Singularity. And if you weren't convinced already, they made the game you're watching right now, the mustachioed powerhouse that is Soldier of Fortune. Dag nabbit, I love me some Soldier of Fortune. Sorry, I'm working on my new YouTube-friendly language. Raven also developed Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, but I didn't play that one because I'm not a fucking nerd.
I'm not your boy toy.
They also made Quake 4. Alright, ignore the Windows watermark, okay? I can't afford that shit. Also, would you please like this video? Maybe it'll generate $10 and I can buy the license in 6 years. Thank you. I want you to know that I used to love Quake 4. Around 20 years ago, I beat the game twice on the Xbox 360 and remembered it fondly. I started this video with the intention of promoting it as a forgotten classic that deserves a lot more respect. And I was playing it on PC after fixing the blurry texture bug. Oh, so exciting. And then I played it, and I was reminded that nostalgia is a cruel mistress. When will I learn? So, Quake 4 more or less picks up where Quake 2 left off. Bitterman, Quake 2's protagonist, defeated the Macron, and now the humans are taking the fight to the Strogg by invading their planet, cleverly named Strogos, which sounds like a trampoline park. You play as Matthew Cain, who, as we find out, is one certified badass.
Who's the new guy?
Matthew Cain, one certified badass.
A man like Cain could get us killed.
This is basically the story of Quake 4 in a nutshell. You invade Strogos for their oil and poppy flowers, everyone gets stiff in the mere presence of Matthew Cain, and then when the big moment happens, people now have disgust towards Cain, and you're supposed to feel something about that. We'll talk about that one big twist in just a second, but outside of that, the rest of Quake 4 is a series of bland characters with awful, and I emphasize, awful haircuts, either yelling at you or telling you to do something. Despite Tim Willett's assurance that you'll care about your teammates, Tim is mistaken. Then again, when has Timbo ever led anyone astray? Perhaps I'm wrong. You all remember such great characters like Sergeant Bidwell, don't you?
Hello, Bidwell. Can you hear me?
I cared about him. And who could forget Johann Strauss, the only, and I mean the only reason people even vaguely remember this character is because he was voiced by Peter Stormare, the go-to vague European hybrid in every role. Here he's supposed to play a German. He sounds like a Swedish guy living abroad in Croatia, but if Tim Willits wants a German, Tim gets a German.
Strauss, what's our situation?
I now control almost all containment doors. We cannot reach the controls to turn off the laser fence. The security door is locked and I can't...
However, it is charming listening to Peter Stormare reflect on getting this gig of a lifetime.
Quake 4 invited me to be part of the 4th episode.
You can tell how fondly he remembers when Quake 4, the game, called and offered him the job. Quake 4 is a swell guy. Anyway, enough of this counterfeit kraut. It's all about the certified badass. You may think that this is the most generic, plain character ever, and well, that's your opinion, mister. You also might wonder why everyone worships this man's mere presence, but Another thing I noticed is that your comrades are always angry at you for being late. Do you remember how you got yelled at the start of Doom 3?
Took your sweet time, Marine.
Yeah, well, that happens like 15 times in Quake 4. Also, the elevators. Look, Quake and Doom were never the pinnacles of storytelling in video games, and they didn't need to be. But you know something? I always appreciated the mostly non-intrusive storytelling of Doom 3, a few cutscenes for the big exposition, and then a lot of PDAs to fill things in if you were interested. If not, no big deal. Quake 4 has a few traditional cutscenes that could not be more boring if they tried. This guy basically just says, "We're gonna take this thingy and fight the Strogg."
And is not to be spoken of outside these walls.
But compared to the elevator rides, this cutscene is like Gone with the Wind. I swear to God, there are no less than 32 elevators and lifts in Quake 4, without exaggeration. It's constant, and some of them go on for upwards of a minute. 60 seconds of tepid music and a few boring lines of dialogue. It had me craving Doom 3 PDAs, but enough of this. I know what you came to see. So it turns out that Bitterman didn't completely take out the Macron at the end of Quake 2. Yay, retcon. So Kane gets captured, and it's time to undergo Stroggification. Hey, by the way, I have this scene and the rest of this review completely uncensored on my Patreon page. Join now for a small donation. You'll get this one, you got it early, and you get all my music. Okay, thanks. So, look, put aside my snarky yet justified dismissal of the rest of Quake 4. This scene is intense and very memorable. My last playthrough of this game was around probably like 2006, 2007, and as this part started, I instantly remembered it and thought, oh god, here it comes. Stroggification is the process of fusing a body with metal and mechanical components. The subject is awake the entire time, and they're given nothing for the pain. At the very end, the victim is implanted with a Strogg neurosite that overrides their central nervous system with AI that takes orders from Strogg High Command. Stroggification is a great mid-game twist, and it's genuinely quite shocking to see Kane all done up. Girl, that look is you. Turning Strogg has other graphical and gameplay side effects like an orange HUD, extra HP, and movement speed that isn't glacial, but it also changes how Matthew Kane is viewed through the eyes of his fans.
Be careful, freak. Lose your bodyguard and you're dead meat.
Once we're back on the Hannibal, all the guys that were lapping Kane's bag earlier are disgusted at the mere sight of him, some even threatening his life now that he's a Strogg. Did nobody brief the crew? I mean, a quick 1MC announcement perhaps?
Attention on deck. Matthew Kane, certified badass, is coming aboard. He survived Stroggification but is still a human. Please give him space and respect.
Nah, that. Just drop this Uggo on board and hope for the best. So, Kane uses his new powers to infiltrate the Strogg, and he ends up rematching the Macron. Dun dun dun! Kane wins, spoilers, you get back on the Hannibal, and everyone just gives you a nice high five. You literally defeated the Strogg's best by yourself, and the prize is a pizza party with a couple of Diet Cokes. Oh, but then haircut here ends with a tease.
Sir, of the wager I have won.
Yes? Yes, sir. What is it?
All right,
But, sir,
all right.
Kane just got back.
Hey, what do you say we go for
Yes,
double
sir.
nothing?
I'll see to
Is
it.
that all right with you, Kane?
Kane, you have new orders.
Yeah, sure, buddy. Whatever you say. Alright, so the story is... yeah. But before I get into the gameplay, I want to say some happy words. I love the id Tech 4 engine. I love the voluminous envelopes of shadow, the dynamic lighting, the normal mapping. I love it all. You have to remember, this was cutting edge in the early aughts. At this point, Doom 3 was already about a year old, so it had lost a little bit of its luster by late 2005, but this engine has aged like a fine wine 20 years later. Originally, I was going to do this review on an Xbox 360 because that's how I played it back in the day, but it kind of ran like butt cheeks, so I went to my beloved GOG, and that was that. But this isn't a tech video. How does this engine jive with Quake 4's aesthetics? Look, firstly, I think I should say that I absolutely adore Quake 1. I'm obsessed with the gothic architecture, the oppressive purple skybox, and the eldritch monsters. Despite the incredible fluidity of movement and the beefy arsenal at your fingertips, the atmosphere is thick with dread. But for what it's worth, I've always loved the art direction of Quake 2. I've always been partial to the Strogg. I love the bizarre techno-industrial humanoid monster mix. I know the purists out there exist. Quake 2 is a generic sci-fi shooter. They just slapped Quake on the box to sell games. Grr. Yeah, well, it's called Quake 2 and a lot of people loved it, so meh. So Quake 4, the guy that hired Peter Stormare, decided to follow on with that direction, and it works well enough. I like seeing the drop pods like the ones in Quake 2. I guess I just like being able to say, hey, I recognize that. There are a handful of really cool scripted or dynamic moments as well, like seeing this grunt smash through these pipes. The steam, the warped metal, the monster's animation, good stuff. You have a Marine getting impaled by a berserker, ooh, Strogg fall over railing in the middle of battle, cool. Or a really genuinely cool moment when this 50-foot harvester spider blows through a gigantic tunnel door and clacks menacingly over top of you. It's a really badass spectacle. Not as badass as certain people. And like I said earlier, the human characters are generic jarhead stereotypes, but I love the Strogg, and I'm a sap for pretty lights and shiny things. I like the tight metal corridors, gigantic fuel lines, haphazard wires, and the bevy of LCD screens everywhere for the random sci-fi bleeps and bloops that don't mean anything, but they look cool. But outside of the Stroggification scene, Quake 4 has a lot of disturbing imagery that I had completely forgotten about. Finding Stroggified humans barbarically hooked into a machine behind a thick pane of glass, the skin from their torso stretched like a snare drum head and riveted into the metal. It's like sci-fi Silent Hill, and it's very effective. The most, and debatably only, memorable scene in the game is the waste processing facility. This is basically going to hell in Doom 3, but this is way scarier to me. The landscape is appropriately hellish. You're surrounded by flesh, gore, and all manner of bodily fluids. Kane has to fight his fellow Marines that failed to Stroggify and are now basically zombies that spit acid. It's really grim and gross. Hey, credit where credit's due. This is a great design. Also, I appreciate the chunks of Strogg that go flying during combat. I personally prefer the dinty more stew jibs from Quake 1 and 2, but these aren't boring sparks like in some games. Ultimately, there was a game in the early days of the Xbox 360 that used the id Tech 4 engine to create an amazing, inventive world. It powered a campaign so special and unique that if I were a rich man, I would immediately fund a remaster or a remake. And that game is Prey 2006, not Quake 4. Quake 4 isn't that good. So, what does one do when they're a certified badass? Well, you pick up your pew pew and you go blam blam. The big thing being advertised at the time was the team dynamic, being part of an elite ground squad.
You are a member of a elite ground squad.
Yeah, I just said that, Tim. Okay, look. So the team dynamic isn't terrible in Quake 4. I like that medics and technicians can heal you and replenish your armor. My playthrough was on hard difficulty, and honestly, I was glad to have this feature a few times. Quake 4 is essentially a World War II shooter in sci-fi skin. WW games were everywhere at the time, so it kind of makes sense, but unlike some of the big FPSs of the day, your teammates in Quake 4 actually kick some ass. These aren't your typical useless COD buddies. In Quake 4, you'll see your mates in Rhino Squad mopping up while you take cover for a reload. Like, thank you, gentlemen. It was also a nice change of pace from the usual one-man army formula that id popularized. Again, credit where credit's due. Unfortunately, objectives are somehow even more boring than the haircuts. They are as follows. Push a big button, protect this fella, go talk to that fella, clear the area, run around a while without a sprint function, and what could be more fun than backtracking? Hey, you made it. Now go back and get that guy and come back. Hoorah! Then you get a fixed gun emplacement and you get one shot. One big bomb-bommy. Well, that was neat. How's about a vehicle? Let's start with the Hannibal. So, I love hub worlds in gaming. The Normandy in Mass Effect comes to mind. Carefully crafted environments with interactive objects, interesting characters with world-building dialogue and clever witticisms. Yeah, well, this isn't that. It's a shiny tin can with a boring decontamination segment. Just walk around listening to inane techno babble and praise for Kane. Could be worse, could be the convoy. What? Sorry. I don't like turret sections in gaming as is, but this particular on-rails shootout is the definition of paint-by-numbers, cookie-cutter gameplay. Fear not, the hover tank segment is just as thrilling. The tank feels like a huge, bulky cannon perched on a floaty plastic box. The generic flying enemies, rolling turret marbles, and Strogg tanks are just not that fun to fight. At least the tank is fast and your splash damage is minimal, and you can kind of just run through most areas. Again, it's not cheap, it's not difficult or frustrating, just very plain. The spider boss with your tank is alright, the design is memorable and the fight is moderately decent. Then there's the mech suit and how to sum this up? Imagine the hover tank, but a lot slower. Fun, right? You know what game had a great mech suit segment? Escape from Butcher Bay. I should review that already. Alright, weapons. The basic blaster pistol is okay. Shoot or hold a shot for a charged blast. Honestly, I doubt you'd use it much, but it is better than the blaster from Quake 2 for what that's worth. The MG is decent. I prefer the Quake 2 version, and I've never understood the hate for it. I kinda like the scope here, it's cool to pick off Strogg from a distance, but it's nothing to write home about. Oh, but they added flashlights to a few guns. Why do I sound like Robin Williams? Oh, this is a direct response to whiny fans that complained about Doom 3. Hey dummies, it was designed like that on purpose. Anyway, there you go, a flashlight on your weapon. Ooh, the shotgun. The shotgun. Do I need to explain the glorious history of id/Raven shotguns? Of course I don't. I'm not a fan of the design here. It looks like an expensive Nerf toy at Target. It's the weirdest mix of bulky yet sleek, but at least it's powerful enough and it has a choke on it that puts the shot shell where you point it, unlike certain games. That was supposed to be a cough. What the fuck? It's a pump action, but it feels like a semi-auto with how fast you cock that sucker. The grenade launcher is a pretty solid jib machine. It's reminiscent of Quake 1's launcher, but it's missing that sweet, sweet heavy metal tingling bounce sound. But it does leave an excellent splatter in close quarters, can't complain too much. The nail gun returns. Nothing will ever top the nail shooters from the original Quake, especially with the ammo boxes bearing that lovely logo. If you know, you know. But in Quake 4, it's much more round and bulky, and it has a neat little rotating cylinder around it. It's pretty fun overall. Well, it's better than the Hyper Blaster anyway. This is basically another id plasma rifle, but it's so boring. I'm a big fan of Doom 3's plasma gun, especially that satisfying bottle clink sound during a reload. Yeah, there it is. Quake 4's not so much. Ectoplasmic blue balls is what I would call it. The rocket launcher, 2 words, splash damage. Most levels are in hallways, so this is fun. The first 3 Quake games had amazing rocket launchers. This one sucks, but it's nowhere near as disappointing as the railgun. The railguns from Quake 2 and 3 were magical. That's right, magical. Quake 3 is the reason that I use the excellent sample in a few of my songs. After an entire game of disappointing legacy weapon variants, they surely had to get the railgun right.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
There's just no impact. There's no jazz. This thing feels like a toy, like an ornament on a tree. I want the belt that the Great Muta has. The design is okay. I like the red shell well enough, I guess. It's just a snooze fest. Even the upgraded version is underpowered and mediocre. Having to play a Quake game with the soft Lady Knuckles version of an iconic weapon was disappointing. Oh, and I had mentioned weapon upgrades. Yep, you'll randomly receive modifications for your arsenal, but there's little to no ceremony. Take a game like BioShock, for example. Finding a weapon upgrade station felt like magic. There was pomp. In Quake 4, some owl lad walks up to you and goes, "Hey, let me see that gun, tink tink, on you go." Then you get a tiny scope or some such. Granted, Quake 4 was 2 years before BioShock, but it's just not that good. The Dark Matter gun, the DMG if you like, is the big powerful weapon to end all weapons, the final gun. Ooh. And it's just kind of a big purple ball of death, and that's if you're lucky. Remember in the darkness when you unleashed a black hole in the middle of a room? Remember how great that was? Yeah, well, this isn't that. The radius on this thing stinks. Just look. This weapon should draw in every nearby foot soldier into its orbit and leave nothing but splatter. Nope, it barely takes out one cannon fodder Strogg. God damn it. The game also tries its hand at some boss fights as well. You know, I can't call these bad because they're not bad. They're just sort of products of their time. And I do love a good old traditional boss fight. Dumping ammo and whittling health bars and such, there's nothing wrong with that. These fights aren't especially good or bad, they're just sort of there. The fat boss is the only one that requires a modicum of strategy, and it's not much of a brain buster. You basically just overfeed Boogie here and douse him with atomized Mountain Dew. Or, if you're a man of culture, Moon Mist. Someone thought this was clever. Then you fight your old comrade, Voss. No, this isn't Rich Voss, but your teammate that got Stroggified and is now this thing. So, this is the Voss boss. Shh, you would have rhymed them too. It's a decent mid-sized arena fight, a big monster, a bit of fodder. Like I said, this isn't bad, and I do love an old school boss fight where you simply throw everything you have at the monster until you win. It's just nothing remarkable. The Network Guardian is another mindless arena battle, a big guy, some fodder, repeat. The Macron fight, the real Macron fight, has a little more thought to it. Emphasis on little. He's got a shield, find and destroy the thing powering the shield and then fire away. It's a classic endgame boss. which is to say a tedious multi-wave slog with a bunch of nonsense running about. Oh, and speaking of tedious, I have to mention and I hasten to use this term, puzzles. The barrel puzzle kind of reminds me of the poisonous room in Doom 3. Just as boring, just as dumb. Well, there's another 80 seconds until we die, and just when I was at my limit with Quake 4, begging for the credit sequence, there's one of these puzzles. I nearly stopped and just did the review. This brings me to the conveyor belt. Late in the game, in the Putrefaction Center, Kane is riding along a conveyor belt, and I had a revelation. This segment is Quake 4 in a nutshell. Going down a narrow, linear path, avoiding hazards, listening to radio chatter, and being dazzled by the pretty lights and neat colors. It was like the time I watched some dude play Guitar Hero 3 at my apartment.
He was playing Metallica's One, mouth agape, goofy little chiclet teeth reflecting the highway of flashing colors and arbitrary score counts. Suddenly, I realized in that moment that I hated Guitar Hero. I hated Lars Ulrich. I hated chiclets.
Alright, so after that mental breakdown, everyone probably stopped watching by now, so here's a little bit about the audio. We already talked about Peter Stormare sleepwalking through his performance, and the rest of the acting is fine, it's fine. What I do honestly enjoy is the sound of the Strogg. I really love their odd dialect. It has this kinda Germanic slant with the appropriate amount of alien gibberish. It makes them more fun to fight. Weapons sound decent, serviceable is the right word. You know, boom, bland, and rat-a-tat-tat, whatever. The soundtrack, however, is definitely underrated. The first Quake was scored by Trent Reznor, and it's peak 90s. The edgy bad boy game devs pairing up with the edgy bad boy rock star, it was perfect. Quake 2's soundtrack, composed by Sonic Mayhem, took things in a different direction, and it is mint. Whereas the Nine Inch Nails tracks were a lot of spooky droning ambience and haunting samples, Sonic Mayhem cranked up the tempo. It's fondly remembered. And even though a game like Dusk took a lot of cues from Quake gameplay-wise, Andrew Hulshult's music sounds largely inspired by Quake 2. This is a good thing. But everyone seems to forget about Quake 4's OST, and they shouldn't. Composers Clint Walsh and Zachary Quarles put together a solid composition. Some tracks sound out of a World War II documentary, and some evoke that creepy industrial ambiance of Trent Reznor's work from '96. Unfortunately, a lot of Quake 4's music is just used as a simple bed for the action. I mean, I know, gameplay first and all, but it's never really given a chance to shine. What do I mean by that? Well, do you remember when Doom Guy cracked a round into his shotgun in Doom 2016? That was giving the music a chance to shine before the action kicks up. So, like the rest of Quake 4, the audio is a big
Hello, Beatwell? Can you hear me?
Since my last playthrough a long time ago, I've heard people talk about how Quake 4 is mid. I always shake my head like, what are you talking about? I remember this being so good, and I couldn't wait to defend it as a forgotten classic that deserves a remake and other such keywords. Nostalgia does funny things to our memory, man. Now, I've played the first 3 Quakes in recent years, and they're all still very fun. They're pretty much timeless. And frankly, Quake Champions deserved to be a lot bigger, in my opinion. But whatever, is Quake 4 bad? No, it's not bad. Rogue Warrior is bad. Turning Point Fall of Liberty is bad. I can't believe I even finished those, quote, games. Quake 4 is just very, very much a 2005 video game, and now it's more of a curious artifact, a window to the past, as opposed to a timeless classic like the 3 games that preceded it. Despite all that, there is no, and I mean no, other series that deserves a fresh start like Quake. There's also not a studio on this earth that deserves to be released from the Call of Duty gulag and allowed to freely create once more. When, oh Lord, when? Also, I did try to play Quake 4 multiplayer. You remember Quake multiplayer, don't you? Remember how Quake 1, 2, and 3 literally revolutionized FPS multiplayer, and some of the legendary modders became game developers themselves? Remember the endless maps out there not being monetized by Bethesda? Remember Jailbreak? Well, I waited and waited, but I couldn't get into a game. Frankly, I considered it mercy.